MG is on a product offensive in Australia at the moment, and its latest gap filler is the car behind me. Known as the QS here in Australia, it's a 3-row, 7-seat large SUV that measures nearly 5 meters long. That makes it a rival for the likes of the Hyundai Santa Fe that we really love here at Chasing Cars, as well as the Mazda CX-80, the Toyota Kluger, and others. Now, it's not actually an MG product first and foremost, as you may already know. Like the HS, it has its roots in a Chinese market car known as the Roewe RX9. That car launched back in August 2022, so a couple of years ago now, but only now has the QS come to Australia in right-hand drive and we're the first market to get it. It's also sold in left-hand drive markets like the UAE as the MG RX9, but the point of today's video is to find out if it's any good, if it really is a rival for the likes of the Hyundai Santa Fe. What we're going to do is our usual thing. We'll check out the interior, check out the practicalities, and take it for a drive. And that's going to be the most interesting thing, I think, because MGs have been quite variable of late. There have been some real high points. The S5 and the MG4 electric vehicles have been very standout in our testing, but petrol cars have been a little bit hit and miss. The ZS has some real high points, the HS does too, but neither of them come together as the complete package. So let's take a look at the QS. Leave your thoughts in the comments section down below, hit subscribe if you haven't done so already, and let's get into it. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. Value for money is really what MG is pushing with the QS, especially with the introductory offer of the base model Excite starting from $46,990. Now we're today looking at the Essence, which is $59,990 drive away and comes with a whole host of equipment. Starting with a 2-litre turbo-petrol engine, driving all 4 wheels. You've also got luxurious things like heating and ventilation of the seats, perforated leather upholstery, a sunroof, and more. So you get an awful lot of your $59,990 drive away. Certainly better value on paper than something like a Hyundai Santa Fe, which starts at about $58,000 drive away for the front-wheel drive version. Mazda CX-80 is more expensive than that for the Pure, and then the Toyota Kluger is nearly $70,000 for the entry-level GX. The only real cheaper alternative in the 7-seat world might be the Chery Tiggo 8 Pro Max, which is about $43,000 drive away, but that is quite a lot smaller. This thing is a genuine 7-seater, so I think MG does have a fair bit to talk about with value there. Styling is obviously quite a subjective thing, but I think the QS has a few telltale signs of what we're going to come back to when we get inside and out on the road, and that is it doesn't really fit into the rest of the MG range, to my eyes at least. Now, even the HS, which is also a Roewe-based car, has a corporate front grille that's changed for MG, but on this QS, it almost looks, I don't know, kind of a little bit Hyundai Palisade meets the Joker. You can let me know if you like it in the comment section down below, but there are some less than tasteful touches on this rather large vehicle, and that really comes down to the amount of chrome used on the outside. And not real chrome, it's obviously plastic chrome, right down to this stick-on sort of strake down the side of the car that just looks really chintzy to me. These 21-inch alloys, which look both too big and too small for the car at the same time. They are at least wrapped in quality Michelin tires. But back to the chrome, we've got this Ultimate badge here, which has nothing to do with anything because it's called the Essence here in Australia. And proportionally, it's kind of got this big vanny aesthetic, kind of like an old Peugeot 5008. So if you can't tell, I'm not super smitten by the design, but there are some nice touches. This pearlescent paint looks to be pretty high quality, no unpleasant runs or sort of imperfections in this car we've got here, and the LED lights are at least pretty crisp. While we're on the topic of lighting, at the back of the QS, there's actually some quite interesting things going on. The brake lights are both in this light bar that runs all the way across and also in the high mount here, which definitely gives it a distinct vibe on the road. Not sure if it's MG, but it's definitely distinct. Though we come back to the chrome stuff, chrome badging, and then you've got these horrendous, cheap-looking chrome fake tailpipes, which, it's 2025. Fake tailpipes, they can die. We do have a power tailgate. It is standard on the Essence, and also the Excite below this, so again, good value. And the boot is decent in size and quite usable. With all 7 seats in place, you still get a nice 203 litres of boot space. Amenity is pretty good as well. It's not like MG has massively skimped to hit a price point. You get shopping bag hooks, 4 tie-down points, and a 12-volt power outlet, plus a little bit of extra storage space below here for the cargo blind and the standard jack that comes with this car for the temporary spare tyre that's located underneath the body of the vehicle. It's also pretty easy to fold these seats forward. They've got multi-position backrests, which I'll come back to. And then when you do that, you get a nice large 517 litre space. And then folding the second row flat, you get over 1,000 litres of boot capacity, good enough for something like a large mountain bike or a surfboard. And finishing quality is a bit of a mixed bag. As I said, the carpet feels quite nice, but this load cover back here does flap around a little bit. And then you've got these very saggy covers for the third row of seats when they're folded down. But you can't get everything for a pretty decent price, so I reckon that's not too bad. The cabin of the QS definitely feels like a Chinese interpretation of a luxury SUV, but I'll come back to the design and the materials in a minute. First, I want to tackle the ergonomics, which are a mixed bag with mostly negative. For a start, the driving position feels very bussy. The steering wheel is canted away from me and the pedals are quite close and I'm set high. It's almost a little bit like a Renault Clio 182 driving position, but sort of not in a good way. Doesn't make me feel confident on the road, and the view out is quite claustrophobic in this car. Then it comes to using the touchscreen. I won't even talk about the touchscreen yet, but rather where the button to open the center console is positioned, which happens to be exactly where my elbow sits when I want to use the touchscreen. So I'm forever opening that. And then sometimes when I'm using the touchscreen, I rest my hand on top of the gear shifter and I accidentally put the car into park with the nub of my wrist. So there's a couple of quite annoying things going on there. But back to the good stuff, because the build quality generally seems to be quite good. There's not a huge number of rattles coming from the front seat, and actually the materials aren't bad. They're a little bit Skoda-like, especially up on top of the dash where you get a nice soft pad. You also get soft padding on the door tops and a sort of leatherette padding here for your arms. There's a little bit of Lexus in the design as well. This reminds me quite a lot of the RX and the NX's center console. And you've also got the one familial thing that does feel MG in here, which is the steering wheel from the MG4. This is a lovely bit of kit, leather appointed with little perforations right where you want to hold it. It just feels really nice, really good in the hand. So I kind of wish the rest of the interior had a bit more of that MG-ness rather than the faux luxury, fake wood grain, and those sorts of things that you get in the Roewe RX9. Again, it feels a little bit like it's been ported across from left to right-hand drive in a rush. More on that is the fact that the wireless charging pads on the left and the USB-C charge points, of which there are 2 in the front seat, are hidden all the way around on the passenger side over here. So it's almost impossible to reach them from the driver's side. Certainly when you're driving, you can't do it. There's no chance. While we're on that, the passenger seat footwell is also very compromised. It's very shallow, very narrow as well, and you can actually see where the steering column used to go through when it was a left-hand drive vehicle. Touchscreen. We've had a couple of issues with touchscreens in MG products, and the QS isn't any different. The new S5 has a better system with a faster processor, but just like the HS, this one is laggy. Sometimes takes, up to a second or 2 from when you press the button on the screen for it to properly respond, and it often gets frozen as well. So I'd love to see some improvements to that. That said, there is wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto that seem to work pretty well over our test period. There's also a 12-speaker Bose sound system, which is really, really loud. It does lack a little bit in terms of nuance and precision and body, but it gets the job done for this price. It certainly sounds better than a lot of bass stereos out there on the market. Finally, we come to the seats, which are comfortable when you're driving along in a straight line, but certainly lack a bit of support in the upper section of them. They don't really hold you in particularly well. They're more like a sort of lounge, comfortable seat. The upholstery on them as well is real leather. They also come with heating and cooling at this price, which is really rather impressive. Plus you get full power adjustment for the driver. So that means 8-way, up, down, with backrest and incline, as well as getting 4-way lumbar support adjustment for the driver. So yeah, bit of a mixed bag in the front of the MG QS. Some good, some bad. Let's check out the back seat. I keep coming back to the price of this car, but for that money, you are bombarded by a feel of luxury when you first get into the back seat. You've got this massive panoramic sunroof that goes all the way back just behind my head, and leather upholstery, pretty decent view out, and some nice materials, soft touch up here, Bose speaker grills even in the back here. So the impression is initially pretty high end. Plus you've got your own climate control back here with a computerized touchscreen that feels, you know, pretty snazzy. But as with the front seat, when you start to look deeper, you start to find some strange issues. For a start, some of the practicalities aren't great. The door bins back here are pretty small. They're not flock lined. Similar story to in the front seat. But the real issue with usability comes from the doors in this car, which are absolutely huge. They are so long. Some of that's good, but the bad thing is, because they open relatively wide, I'd say to about 70, 75 degrees, getting out of this car in a tight multi-story car park is nearly impossible. There's no way you can open the door wide enough to easily get in and out in a tight car park. The flip side of that is when the door is open wide enough at home or something like that, you have a really big aperture to get into and you find a lot of space back here. The bench is on sliders and the backrest is adjustable through multiple positions. I've got it in a comfortable one for me, but I can go even further back with the slider and I've got heaps of legroom, still plenty of headroom and good toe room, or I can slide all the way forwards, still have a pretty comfortable amount of legroom, but give my third row passengers a little bit of extra space. Before we get back there, I'll just point out the pull down armrest as well, where you see more of that kind of cheap looking wood grain, but you do get a nice, well damped set of cup holders there in the back. It's really quite easy to get into the third row of the QS thanks to that power actuated seat fold system, which is really great. It means that kids or people who aren't as strong or someone with a full arm of shopping is going to be able to do that with no problem at all. Problem is, it's not on the curbside for Australia, which I think is a real oversight for something like this, because on the other side, it's a simple manual toggle that you pull forward that does require a little bit of effort. So I would have loved to see MG think about that and perhaps integrate that into this car rather than just pushing it out to market. Anyway, back here, I actually have really quite a lot of space. Now, this isn't in the position I was sitting in, but this set of seats is, and I'm not going to be comfortable for hours and hours back here. My legs still hang pretty high, but for say half an hour back from the pub or something like that, I would be more than comfortable. I'm also pretty well catered for amenities back here. I've got a great spot to sit my phone, a little drink holder. I've even got a single USB-A charge point over there. I've got speakers back here so I don't miss out on the tunes going on. And I even have this little vent here that would blow straight on my face. Not the best place to have a vent in my opinion, but it's nice to have one anyway. MG has just moved from a blanket 10-year 250,000 kilometre warranty back down to a 7-year unlimited guarantee. It can be extended to 10 years and 250,000 if serviced on time at an MG dealer, and this applies to the QS. That said, servicing is not cheap. It's due every 12 months or 15,000 kilometres, and over 5 years it'll cost you $3,618 to maintain the QS Essence. Buyer beware too, because the 6th service, just as you come out of that 5-year period, costs $2,526 or $2,920 for the cheaper front-wheel drive model. As for fuel consumption, the QS does require 95 RON premium unleaded, and the quoted consumption figure is 8.8 litres per 100 Ks. In the real world, you're likely to see higher than that. However, our 200k test loop returned 10.4 litres per 100 Ks, and around town I was seeing more like 12, 13 and 14 litres per 100. It's a shame that MG does not offer a hybrid version of the QS yet, which would make it much more competitive with rivals like the Santa Fe and the Toyota Kluger. When it comes to driving the MG QS, there's one feature that I wasn't expecting to be quite so good, and that is the standard fit adaptive dampers on this top-spec all-wheel drive Essence model. Took a little bit of figuring out because it says computer-controlled suspension or something like that in the spec sheet, but the drive modes do actually have a bearing on how it drives. The standard is auto, and you can also switch it around into eco. There's a custom mode, and then there's a sport mode plus a couple of off-road modes. One's sort of a generic off-road and the other is a snow mode. They all influence various things, but the dampers are really quite impressive. We were hammering this thing along a really unpleasant Australian country road, and it was quite impressive how controlled the body remained without being too harsh. And that is a really big surprise because this car's fitted with massive 21-inch alloy wheels with 40 series tyres. That is a recipe for a ride disaster, especially on a cheap car, but must be said the QS does a really good job of keeping things in check. Would it be better with just smaller 19-inch alloy wheels and a bit more sidewall chub? Absolutely. You'd also lose some of the harshness that comes through on sort of small bumps and large sharp-edged bumps that you do get from these 21s. And you notice that the chassis stiffness is a little bit lacking in the QS too. But on the whole, I must say the driving experience in terms of suspension, steering, braking is all really good. Nice strong brakes, good, precise, light steering that feels quite natural in the hands. Not amazing, but certainly really nice and friendly. The fact that it has the MG4's really lovely to hold steering wheel certainly helps there. So chassis dynamics, ride and handling, all of the stuff that we're usually picking on Chinese-made cars for here at Chasing Cars is all totally up to scratch. In fact, really rather good. Not maybe class leading, but really damn close considering the price. You're not going to get this level of sophistication on any of this car's rivals at this price. So well done to MG there. But, and I'm guessing you're expecting one of these, there are a couple of big buts in the driving experience of the QS, which just make it quite tiresome. For me though, the worst bit is the engine and gearbox calibration. There's a 2-litre turbo under the bonnet making pretty decent outputs, 360 Newton meters. Sounds good on paper, especially paired to all-wheel drive and a 9-speed automatic transmission, but the real world experience is just so lackluster. I'll come to a stop now and I'll show you what happens. Imagine you're sitting at a red traffic light here. Auto start stop may or may not come on. I think we're gonna be okay. And you wanna take off. Light goes green. Watch this, ready? Foot off the brake, accelerator, only now, and then, whoa, all of a sudden, you get everything. And the sound of the engine is also really unpleasant, really thin, like someone's playing a harmonica or a kazoo under the bonnet. It's not a nice feeling engine, it's quite peaky. And when you come out of a tight corner like that, and you ask for a little bit of power, say you're on a country road, it just doesn't deliver. And it's such a shame because, as I said, that suspension and ride and handling poise is really impressive, but it all lets itself down when it comes to the drivetrain calibration. And it just makes this such a tiring car to drive, both around town and out in the country. I should add that sound deadening could be a little bit better as well. There's quite a lot of road noise that makes its way into the cabin. Not so much decibel-wise, but it's definitely a piercing, sharp note that comes into the cabin. And it's those things that make this car feel like it's not refined and it's not cohesive. It's missing, and this is true of a lot of modern MGs at the moment, they seem to be missing someone who sits at the top of the chain and decides how an MG product drives and makes all the vehicles feel nice, consistent, and yeah, that word cohesive. It's something that Korean manufacturers have really cottoned onto today. Albert Biermann is a great example at Hyundai. He obviously signs off end products, but that kind of obsessive attention to detail permeates the whole company now. So every Hyundai product drives really rather nicely, certainly Australian tuned, Australian delivered ones. And that's something we'd love to see in MG. I'm going to talk about the safety features now as well, because this is a hot topic, and for the most part, the QS is really quite good. The lane keep assist does work. It's not super intrusive and annoying. The speed limit assist does default on to beeping every time, which just feels a little bit lazy, but it's not particularly difficult to turn off. You can't do it through the drop-down menu. You can turn lane keep and stop-start off through that. So you do have to tap a couple of times on the laggy touchscreen to disable that if you want to, but the bongs aren't super overbearing. Same for the driver attention monitoring. Feels like most of that stuff has been quite well tuned, but what hasn't been well tuned, unfortunately, is the interaction with other touchscreen features. Say you're driving along and you want to adjust the air conditioning, for example. You've got fan speed down here on these physical buttons, but if you want to adjust the vents, physical one over here, the one in the center is actually computer controlled, like a Tesla, except that this car does not have a touchscreen that equals a Tesla's level of responsiveness. So you're left futzing around in this touchscreen and it's just so annoying. You end up so distracted for such a long time. And again, it's that real shame there's not a dedication to that driver control hierarchy that's going on in so many other brands at MG. And it does show the age of this product. Maybe new in Australia in 2025, but as I covered at the top, this stuff has all been around on sale in China since late 2022. And it's amazing how far we've come in that time. I should also add that the MG QS is yet to receive an ANCAP rating in Australia. So to sum up how it drives then, there are some real glimmers, some real shining beacons of goodness in it that are let down by a little bit of laziness, a little bit of lackluster tuning and calibration that tells me that this car feels like it was brought to market as quickly as possible to keep sales going and to grow the company rather than delivering a cohesive, holistic product that genuinely could take on cars like the Hyundai Santa Fe and Toyota Kluger. Time for a verdict on the MG QS. There's no doubting it offers supreme value. At $50,990 drive away, you get so many inclusions: 2-litre turbo, all-wheel drive, leather upholstery, and adaptive dampers that genuinely work. It's amazing how well this big SUV rides considering it has 21-inch alloy wheels. Plus the handling is surprisingly impressive. But that doesn't mean we'd recommend it over its rivals. There are some shortcomings to this car, not least the lack of sound deadening and insulation inside the cabin. The touchscreen is laggy, and it feels like MG has converted this car from left-hand drive to right-hand drive in a hurry to get it to market. The telltale signs are the USB controls and the fact that the slide forward power actuation is away from the curbside here in Australia. So there are some shortcomings to the MG QS that I'd love to see addressed in a midlife facelift. For now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this car in the comments section below, and as a sneak preview, we have a comparison between this car and our favourite 7-seat SUV, the Hyundai Santa Fe, coming up very soon, so make sure you hit subscribe to Chasing Cars so that you don't miss that. And as always, thank you very much for watching.